Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my garden, and it's September. I don't even know what day it is. 20th. And here are my roses. These are miniature roses planted here 3 or 4 years ago. So these roses are cramped in here, but they are very good welcome for when you are coming out of the door. So I love these roses. They are in the perfect spot. There's a lot of blooms right now. So I noticed that these miniature roses actually blooms prolific like this twice in the year. So first time in the early summer, and now that it's starting to get cold, we are in autumn, it has a lot of flowers again. Down here you could see the pink ones in their prime. Isn't that beautiful? They're very tiny. Like this one's only 1.5 inches. So I guess that's why they're called miniature roses. I used to think that they're called miniature roses because, you know, when you buy them at the grocery store, they're in little pots. A very tiny plant, like maybe the size of this, about 6 inches. So they remain tiny like that in the grocery store, and then eventually they get exhausted and they die inside the house. But I came to learn that they are actually sprayed some growth retardants, which makes them remain small. But just like you see here, when you plant them outside, they actually grow and become full-size roses with tiny blooms. So actually that's the reason why they're called miniature roses, is because their blooms remain tiny, as opposed to regular roses where their blooms can become like even 4 inches big. So look at this one. It resembles a tea rose in that it has a high center, but it's only about 2.5 inches big, and some of them are smaller than that. See, this one is like a tea rose bud, right? They're beautiful. Some say that it's not a rose without a scent, but to me it doesn't matter. You can plant this along scented plants or arrange it in a flower vase with other plants that are scented, and there you go. Plus a lot of people are allergic now to scent, so we just enjoy the beauty. This is the peony. They are magnificent during the springtime. So they bloom only once, but the foliage remains beautiful. So they're still a very nice attraction to the garden. They have unique leaves to them. So we know that fall really is upon us. Winter is coming. The leaves are starting to fade. We see the stress in the leaves now caused by cold. The sedums are also turning into magenta color. Beautiful colors. They were lushly green up until now. That is a very good sign that we are awaiting winter now to come. These are lilies. I had different colors of lilies on the side. They are all faded now, so we're just going to wait until these leaves have completely turned brown and we can cut off the leaves. Depending on the time and energy I have this fall, this can be dug up and replanted, because in order for these lilies to be really happy, the bulbs should be planted 4 inches apart. But through the years, as you can see, their babies have grown, and in the spring they actually grew 1 bud each. Here's another one. So these guys can be replanted. These holes here are signs that there are red beetles eating my lilies. I don't spray any insecticides on these lilies. I just come every morning to the garden and inspect the leaves, and I'm quite the hunter, really. If I see a beetle, I just handpick them and put them in soapy water. See the damage they do. And I check the underside of the leaves if there are any eggs, and that's when I clean up the leaves and remove those eggs, because you know, it doesn't always feel good to be killing the insects because they're alive as well. Good morning. But if they are in the egg stage, then they're easier to get rid of. Down here I have a lot of baby lilies. These were planted very tiny bulbs. I dug up some bulbs way back in autumn last year, and I saw that they have a lot of little bulbs in them, so I planted them here. Look, one of the bulbs have gotten really big, so I can dig this up, and so it was this size actually. It was this size when I planted them. Some are even smaller, and they have grown to that big. So I'm gonna dig that out and then plant it deeper. I have some tulips in this area, but I have been watering this area galore. I don't know if they're still there or if they have rotten, but no worries. Husband pre-ordered a lot of bulbs from Costco, and they should be arriving anytime soon. Alert, alert, alert. Mildew. I noticed that this peony at this time of the year is covered in mildew, but nothing else is. The roses that are not very far away from the peony that has a lot of mildews, they're not affected. So I just conclude that yep, I don't really need to spray, or maybe I need to spray, but there's no immediate need for it because fall is here. It's quite chilly right now. Winter's coming soon, so that foliage is gonna go anyway. And over to the side is a bed that it's I've tried to experiment on this bed a lot of times. It used to have just hostas in here. The hostas here did very good this year. They're still green. Some of it are turning yellow, but most of the time at this time of the year they're all like that. But you can see just the rare leaves turning brown as opposed to the whole big club still green. So that's amazing. Sedum, so pretty. When I was transplanting sedums on the other side of the garden, there were some little ones that get broken, so I didn't want to throw them out. I'm still at that stage where I don't really want to throw anything from the garden. I just want to save everything. So these two are a good example of that, and they have grown super big now. In the spring, I'm going to divide that, and I think I'm gonna move it somewhere else. And this bed, I'm going to plant more roses. See, 2 years ago, I planted some vegetables in this garden, tomatoes and ground cherry tomatoes. These ground cherries are growing every year since then. I tried to weed out a lot of them and leave one because I don't know, I like harvesting some ground cherry tomatoes as well. They look very messy, but you know, the occasional fruits that you harvest from it and you can chew on it while working in the garden, it's quite nice. It's delightful. Maybe next year I'll plant some strawberries in this section too, so there'd be more things to chew on, harvest, you know, while walking in the garden. I had 3 clematis vines on this area, and they were beautiful when they were planted, but one of them just took over like a weed and killed the other 2 clematises. I don't mind this one because the bees love them, and I kind of care a lot about the bees, so I leave it to enjoy. But you know, they're getting so weedy and unsightly now, so this one really needs to be cleaned out. I'll just wait until it turns brown so that the bees can still have their fun. And when the winter gets deeper and that one turns practically dead, although it doesn't really die because it grows from the roots, then maybe I can transfer them somewhere else in the garden. And here are more hostas. These are also little bits of hostas that got cut off while I was transferring them or dividing them, and they grow fast and abundant. They like this corner here because of the shade from the bush. So there is this corner of the garden. Behind the scenes on this little rose patch, I did not intend for this one to be a rose patch. Well, it's not even a rose patch, I guess, but as it turns out, it has more than 10 roses in it, and they are doing super well, unexpectedly super well, because I don't know anything about gardening roses. I basically just planted them in the ground, although you know, I did my due diligence and prepared the soil with a lot of compost. So these were all clay soil at the beginning, and we dumped in here buckets and buckets and buckets of compost. No fertilizer, just clay soil and compost, and everything that's planted in it are very healthy. I get aphids here, especially in the spring and early summer. And I just leave them be because the ladybugs would come and eat them. At the beginning they were kind of scary because you would see the buds covered in aphids, and it's you know that they're not healthy, they're kind of yucky. So I was worried, but you know what, when the ladybugs came, they just ate them all up. No need to spray. This is the knockout rose, and knockout roses, you don't really need to deadhead them. They are called self-cleaning. And also, because we are nearing winter, I really have stopped deadheading my roses. But knockout roses, because they are self-cleaning, you see that they're still growing buds and new growth, versus the modern blush. There are a little bit of new growth, but not as abundant as the knockout roses. They are instead forming rose hips. So let's see how that would turn out. This is their first year in the garden because I just planted them in summer last year. So this is really their first full summer, first full year in the garden. This rose has taken over my walkway and working well with the sedum. We're gonna go and walk through there. The hose is a tripping hazard, be careful. Okay, so here is a closer view of the sedum. Bees love sedum. There's the garden. September. You know, there's that song that says, I'll see you in September when summer is gone. Have a good time, but remember, I'll be waiting when summer is gone. This is summer being gone. I never really deadheaded these rudbeckias. I don't know if I'm supposed to. So those flowers are their original flowers ever since they started blooming up until now. They have new blooms, healthy blooms, and there are new ones. So I'm not sure whether these are reblooming kinds and I should have been deadheading them. But you know what? They did so good in the garden. It was my first time planting this flower in the garden, and it was such a very pleasant experience. Look at how many flowers it gave me, just abundant. And among the roses, you know, it's always nice to spend time with family, right? So I planted some cousins to the roses, namely blueberries. Can't see. I'll go on the other side and show you. I think that all the roses in the garden did very well this summer. But this Italian ice rose did extra well because it never stopped blooming. There's always a bloom in the bush. Like even this one where I just deadheaded the last few bits of it are starting to grow new buds again. So I heard about ever-bearing roses in the past. Maybe this is one of them. And it's very disease resistant. And the foliage is beautiful. Green with red outlines. I love it. This is the beautiful chocolate weed, I think it's called, or ajuga, bogleweed. So it's a ground crabber that's very prolific and it spreads. Look at this one, and it's very shiny with the sunshine. And I think this one defies the convention, which is this weed was supposed to be growing in shade. So they recommend that it be planted with hostas, underplantings with shade-loving plants, because it's supposed to love the shade. But this one in my garden is planted in direct sun along with Columbines, roses, and rudbeckias, and despite that, it's really doing very well. So I am trying to think about letting it spread all throughout the lawn. Maybe it'll work out. What do you think? The Columbines are newly planted in the early summer. I haven't gotten a lot of flowers from them because I guess they haven't had the time to acclimate to their new surroundings. So hopefully next summer we'll get more blooms from them. That one is starting to bloom right there. Get closer a little bit. Here are the blueberries, and their leaves have changed from deep green to deep red now because of the fall. So pretty. It's like fiery red, and look at the contrast between the red blueberry leaves and the rose green leaves. Isn't that beautiful? So the distance that they've been planted, the blueberries and the roses, is quite small. So I don't know how that would turn about as the years go by, but this at this time it still looks very good. I have what do you call this plant? Hydrangea. It has big beautiful blooms when I bought it from the nursery a few years ago, and it was labeled as indoor plants. I planted it outside anyway just to see if it grows, and it does. It comes out every year, but it doesn't bear any flowers. I think it's very tender, the flowers that grows in the springtime, and we'll try maybe next year if I give it sufficient protection. Maybe I'll be able to save the flowers from frost. And other things that are very successful in this garden are, going back here, are miniature roses. These are miniature roses that I planted autumn of last year. I have a video posted last year, and they're doing very well. I planted them late in the fall too, but even then there wasn't any damage to them. They have grown beautifully. So I'm hoping that they would grow a lot bigger in this space and call it their home. But already they've been doing handsomely great, so I was inspired and I divided a gazillion more roses right there to plant in my new garden bed. Although I have this variety that's supposed to have a nice pink color to them, but they look very unstable and they're full of black spots. One of them even lost their leaves already. But even though there's no more leaves left, there's sprouts growing. So there's hope to them yet. So they're not looking very good, but I think it may depend on the variety of roses, because I have this one. It's a white rose, but depending on the temperatures, it has some colorations to it. The spots are a result of the cold, and there's also a shade of yellow to them, which is beautiful. And sorry, the streets are getting busy now, so it's kind of loud, but yeah. So yeah, the color is beautiful, and it's fully double, lots of petals, and considerably healthy foliage. I guess there's a lot of black spots to them also, but maybe they'll pick up, maybe. But I plan to plant them in this section of the garden. The dahlias will be gone in due time, so I'm going to replace them with miniature roses. I also have some of those roses in pots right now. They are hardy to my zone, so once the dahlias are gone right here, I'll plant the roses in this area. think this would be crazy. My husband thinks I'm crazy. But I want to expand the garden to all these available spaces in the yard. It's a lot of space available to garden, but my neighbors don't have gardens. I am the only one who really have a lot of plants in the front yard, so that's why the idea of adding more beds is a little too much for some people, I guess. But when I think about the idea, I get really excited. You know, more roses in the garden, more dahlias. What's crazy about that? Look at this pretty. Even if I spread sedum all over the garden, it would look really pretty. So, well, I don't mind doing that. I don't mind doing all the work. Okay. So I guess that's it for this garden tour. Over and out.